Good afternoon. At Phenix Capital's Virtual Impact Summit last March, Chief Executive Dirk Molenman reminded us that we have only got 10 years left if we're going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Now, his call to action to us all was, let's make them count. Well, 4 years ago, when I set up Pensions for Purpose, I set myself a personal goal, which was to see at least 5% of UK pension fund assets allocated to impact investments. These are investments that achieve the dual purpose of a financial return and having a positive impact on society or the environment before I retired. Now, that's in about 7 or 8 years' time, so it's pretty close to 2030. 5% of UK pension fund assets is around £100 billion, 120 billion euros, $140 billion. Just think, if we extended that to global institutional investors, we most definitely can make the next 10 years count. But as investors, we need to act fast and we need to take effective decisions. Some of you are going to be much further along your journey already, but perhaps there are some who are just thinking about how to bring purpose into their investment strategies. Either way, I hope that perhaps what I've got to say will resonate with you. The first step for a pension fund is to agree a set of investment beliefs around ESG, environmental, social, and governance. At Pensions for Purpose, the way we do this is to run workshops with trustees, where we use the Sustainable Development Goals as a framework for the discussion, looked at through an investment lens. So we ask trustees to choose the SDGs that they think are likely to have the biggest impact on their investments, either from a risk perspective or from a return opportunity perspective. Now, across the different workshops that we've run, we've seen some common themes emerging. Nearly all the pension funds that we spoke to chose climate-related goals as their top priority. After that, most of them selected economic-related goals. I think this comes back to their fiduciary responsibilities. And then we saw much more individuality in the goals that were chosen. So some of them took the environmental theme through to their portfolios and said they still wanted to prioritise things like sustainable cities, responsible consumption. But we also saw social and governance themes coming through. Health and well-being, gender diversity, for example, also began to be seen coming through. But I've been left in no doubt at all that climate remains the top priority for UK pension funds when thinking about their beliefs. The problem is that it's at that point that trustees are often being seen scratching their heads because they don't know where to go next. We usually suggest that they start by mapping their portfolios against their new beliefs so that they can see perhaps where they're doing very well already, and perhaps where the challenging problem areas are, where they need to start first. Now, if they've got a pure climate focus, that might be a carbon footprint analysis. But where they've incorporated other goals, social and governance goals, then a wider SDG mapping exercise may be more informative. Now, it's here that they immediately face a hurdle. We did some research that looked at the firms that were offering mapping services to pension funds. And all of them could do it for listed equities, but only 3/4 of them could do it for fixed income. And in fact, only 40% could do it for private market assets. Now, these data gaps mean that trustees may be making critical decisions about their investments, but without having the full picture in front of them. So choose your provider carefully. Well, the second step that we suggest is that trustees then go to their investment consultant and ask them to model the investment strategy, but bringing in purpose as a third dimension alongside risk and return. Okay, so investment consultants, I would ask you, please, don't make this too complex. I've seen such complex modelling charts and very impressive, an eye-watering array of recommended changes to the investment portfolio. The problem is that the trustees are, if they're the lay trustees, they're bewildered by what's put in front of them. This is new territory for pension funds. So please try and keep it as simple as you possibly can. Perhaps push those complex graphs to an appendix. At the end of the day, all the trustee really wants to know is, what does my roadmap look like? Which regulations have I got to take into account on climate? Where should I begin? How should I change the strategy? And then once I've done that, how am I going to measure success? Having observed some of the UK pension funds that we've worked through going through this process, it seems to me that it's most effective when broad strategic goals are set for the fund. Then any investment changes have been broken down into bite-sized, understandable solutions, one step at a time. I thought it might be interesting just to briefly share a case study from a UK public sector fund that we worked with. They initially took the investment beliefs workshop, they agreed their priorities. They then appointed an SDG mapper on the whole pension fund portfolio. They were quite clear they wanted everything to be mapped. Now that took quite a few months to go through that process. We then helped them interpret the output, identifying which areas needed to be worked on first and where changes would be likely to have the biggest impact to make them become most aligned to their beliefs. We then ran a second workshop to help them decide how to implement those changes. The consultant worked with them throughout this process, and by the end, they were left with a very clear idea of their next steps. Most importantly, the entire committee shared the same strategic goal. They were all going off in the same direction, but the implementation of it was individual to their pension funds. The point I'd like to make is that it took them a year to get to that point. This is not something that can happen immediately, so we do need to act fast. What are some of the common actions that we're seeing coming through in UK pension funds? Well, moving passive to low carbon passive, allocating to renewable energy infrastructure is very popular, moving active mandates to sustainable active mandates. And some of the pension funds that are actually leading the way on this agenda in terms of climate are now starting to think a little bit more innovatively. So, for example, investing in assets that contribute positively to biodiversity, which is part of the climate solution, or investments that are focusing on things like grid optimization, carbon capture and storage, water efficiency. Many of them are thinking about how they work towards a 2050 net zero goal, and they're setting interim decarbonisation targets so that they stay on track. We're definitely seeing a real shift along the spectrum of capital, from responsible investment to sustainable thematic strategies and towards positive impact solutions. So where does this leave us? Well, first of all, a call to action for asset owners. We need to learn from each other. We need to work collaboratively. So please share your experiences. Be honest about some of the challenges that you face, and be willing to talk about the solutions that you have chosen for your investment portfolios. We need to work together. And asset managers, keep innovating, keep coming to us with new funds that can help asset owners align to their investment beliefs. And I'm sure we'll hear about some of these impact opportunities over the next couple of days. So I echo Dirk's call to action. Please, let's make the next 10 years count. We need to start doing that today. Thank you.